The grand chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as the human delegation entered. 27 alien species watched from their raised platforms as 5 humans walked to the center of the room. The humans were dressed in simple gray suits with no markings or decorations. They carried small tablets, but nothing else. Ambassador Krill of the Vexnar race looked down at the humans with 4 of his 6 eyes. His skin shifted from blue to purple, showing his dislike. "Representatives of Earth, you have been summoned to answer for your actions," Krill said. His voice boomed through the chamber. "The Council has observed your activities with growing concern." The human representatives stood in a straight line. They said nothing. Their faces showed no emotion. High Elder Tazel of the Mern clicked her mandibles together. "Your silence does not help your case, humans. We expect answers." Still, the humans said nothing. One of them, a woman with short gray hair, took notes on her tablet. Ambassador Krill continued. "The Council charges humanity with 3 major violations of galactic law. First, unsanctioned colonization beyond your approved sectors. Second, development of weapons technology that threatens galactic peace. Third, cultural contamination of developing worlds." On the viewing screens around the chamber, images appeared. Human ships landing on planets outside their territory. Human factories producing what looked like weapons. Human entertainment and goods appearing on worlds they were not supposed to visit. "What do you say to these charges?" asked Krill. The humans looked at each other. Then they turned back to face the Council. They remained silent. "This is unusual," whispered Delegate Ors to his neighbor. "Most species defend themselves or at least deny the charges." The gray-haired woman continued to take notes. The other 4 humans stood straight, looking directly at the Council members. High Elder Tazel's patience ended. "Speak, humans. Do you admit these violations?" The gray-haired woman looked up from her tablet. She met Tazel's 8 eyes without fear, but she said nothing. "Perhaps they do not understand the seriousness of this meeting," suggested Ambassador Krax of the Talarian Federation. "Humans are new to space travel. Only 75 years with faster-than-light technology. They are young and primitive." "Young, yes," said Elder Voss of the Ancient Dur. His voice was slow and deep like old stone, but not to be underestimated. "Their rise has been troubling, too fast, too eager." The humans continued their silence. One man, tall with dark skin, checked the time on his watch. Another adjusted his glasses, but none spoke. Ambassador Krill's skin darkened to deep purple. "Your silence will not save you. The Council has gathered evidence over 10 years. We have monitored your expansion. You were given clear boundaries, yet you ignored them." On the screens, more images appeared. Human mining operations on asteroids outside their territory. Human research stations near the borders of other species' space. Human ships traveling through restricted areas. "Is this the behavior of a responsible galactic citizen?" asked Krill. "You were welcomed into the galactic community with open arms despite your violent history. We overlooked your numerous planetary wars. We shared technology. We offered guidance. And this is how you repay our generosity?" The humans exchanged glances again. The gray-haired woman made more notes. Still not one word was spoken. Murmurs spread through the chamber. This was not normal. Most species pleaded, argued, or tried to explain their actions. The human silence was unsettling. "I believe we should proceed to judgment," said Elder Voss. "Their silence speaks for itself. They cannot defend their actions." "Agreed," said Tazel. "They show no respect for this council." Ambassador Krill looked down at the human delegation one more time. "This is your final chance to speak in your defense. The Council is prepared to vote on sanctions against Earth and all human colonies." The gray-haired woman stopped writing. She looked up at Krill. For a moment, it seemed she might speak. But she only nodded once and continued taking notes. "Very well," said Krill. "The Council will now vote." One by one, the representatives of the 27 species cast their votes. The screens around the chamber showed the results. 25 voted for sanctions. Only 2 voted against. "The Council has decided," announced Krill. "The following sanctions will be placed on humanity, effective immediately." The largest screen displayed the list. All human ships must return to Sol system or the 5 established colony systems within 30 days. No new human colonies may be established. Human military forces must be reduced by 70%. All human weapons research must be overseen by Council inspectors. Human ships are forbidden to travel beyond their approved territories without Council permission. Human trade with other species will be strictly controlled. These sanctions will remain until the Council determines that humanity can be trusted, Krill said. Do you understand these terms? The humans looked at the screen. The gray-haired woman finished her notes. Then she turned to Krill and nodded once. Verbal confirmation is required, Krill insisted. Do you, as representatives of Earth and all human colonies, understand and accept these terms? The gray-haired woman stepped forward. The council members leaned forward, expecting her to finally speak. But instead she simply bowed deeply. The other 4 humans followed her example. They bowed in perfect unison, then straightened. Without a word, they turned and walked toward the exit. This is unprecedented, said Krax. They must speak. It is protocol, but the humans did not speak. They left the chamber in the same silence with which they had entered. After the doors closed behind them, the council erupted in discussion. What does this mean? Asked a nervous delegate from a younger species. Why wouldn't they speak? It means they know they are guilty, said Tazul confidently. They had no defense to offer. Or perhaps they do not respect this council enough to even argue, suggested Elder Voss. That would be concerning. Outside the chamber, the human delegation walked quickly to their ship. Only when they were inside, away from all alien ears, did the gray-haired woman finally speak. Send the message to Earth, she said. The Council has made its decision exactly as we predicted. What do you think will happen now, Ambassador Chen? Asked one of her colleagues. Ambassador Chen looked at her notes and allowed herself a small smile. Now we wait. The next move belongs to the Council, and when the time comes, they will regret their decision. As their ship detached from the station and prepared for the jump back to Earth, not one of the humans looked back at the massive Council structure. Their silence had said everything they needed to say. On Earth, the message from Ambassador Chen arrived within hours. The World Council met immediately. The room was filled with military officers, scientists, and government officials. There was no panic, no anger, just calm determination. The Galactic Council has voted for sanctions, announced President Okafor, just as our intelligence predicted. The next phase begins now. Around the table, heads nodded. Plans that had been in preparation for years were now put into motion. Orders went out to all human ships and colonies. Earth would comply with the sanctions. Earth would be silent, and the Council would learn all too soon what that silence truly meant. 3 weeks after the Council's decision, the last human ship left Galactic Central Station. The small trading post that had sold Earth coffee, chocolate, and art now stood empty. A sign on the door simply read closed. No explanation, no date of return. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Human traders packed up their goods overnight. Human diplomats left their posts. Human tourists returned to Earth. All without fuss, without complaint, and most disturbingly to the other species, without a single word of protest. This is most unusual, said Ambassador Krax during a private meeting with Ambassador Krill. I expected appeals, negotiations, even begging. But this silence. Krill's skin had settled into a confident blue. They know they were caught breaking the rules. They have no choice but to accept our decision. But to withdraw so completely? My sources say that even their communications have almost stopped. Only official channels remain open, and those are barely used. They are showing their primitive nature, said Krill, like a child who sulks when punished. On the border world of Nexus 3rd, the alien merchant Zur was troubled. His best supplier of luxury goods, a human named Jackson, had closed his warehouse 2 days after the sanctions were announced. I don't understand, Zur had said when Jackson informed him. You still have 30 days to leave. Why go so quickly? Jackson had smiled politely. Best not to wait until the last minute. He handed Zur a data crystal. Here's a list of alternative suppliers who might have similar items. All our accounts are settled. It was a pleasure doing business with you. And that was it. No complaints about the Council's decision. No anger. Just polite business wrapped up neatly. Now, a month later, Zur looked at his empty warehouse section where Earth goods had once brought him good profits. Other merchants had similar stories. The humans had vanished from galactic trade, leaving everything in perfect order. In the Council chambers, a special session was called to discuss the human situation. Our monitoring shows that the humans have complied with all sanctions, reported Delegate. And all ships have returned to Sol system or their 5 colonial systems. Military vessels have been decommissioned at the required rate. They have allowed our inspectors to verify their weapons research facilities. Then, the sanctions are working, said Ambassador Krill with satisfaction. Perhaps too well, said Elder Voss. The ancient Dur rarely spoke, so when he did, all listened. The humans have cut almost all contact with the galactic community. Trade is down 98%. Cultural exchanges canceled. Scientific collaborations ended. They do what is required by the sanctions, nothing more. They'll come around, said Tazul. No species can live in isolation. They'll get bored or hungry for trade or curious. Humans are especially curious. Not anymore. It seems, said Elder Voss. Our observers report increased activity in their home system, but nothing that violates the sanctions. On the main screen, images from Earth orbit appeared. Large space stations were being dismantled. Ships carried pieces away toward the outer planets. What are they doing? Asked Krax. Complying with our demands to reduce their military, said Krill. Those stations had weapon systems. But they're not just removing weapons, said Ors. They're taking the stations apart entirely. And look at these images from their colonies. The screen changed to show human colony worlds. Construction had stopped on many buildings. Some completed structures were being taken down. They appear to be scaling back, said Ors with concern. Why would they dismantle working infrastructure? Perhaps their economy is suffering under the sanctions, suggested Tazul. Good. They will learn their lesson. Elder Voss looked troubled. I have studied human history. This behavior is not consistent with their patterns. When pressed, humans typically push back. They argue. They fight. They do not simply withdraw. The humans know they cannot win against the combined might of the Council, said Krill. They are accepting their place. Voss shook his head slowly. I'm not convinced. This silence speaks of something else. Something we may not understand. The discussion continued, but no conclusion was reached. The Council agreed to maintain the sanctions and continue monitoring human activity. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Okafor met with the World Council in a deep underground facility. The room was filled with military leaders and scientists. Large screens showed data from across the Sol system and the 5 colony worlds. Phase 2 is proceeding on schedule, reported Admiral Chen, the older brother of Ambassador Chen. The public dismantling operations are providing excellent cover. The aliens see exactly what we want them to see. And our real operations? Asked President Okafor. General Rodriguez stepped forward. The Jupiter and Saturn shipyards are at 100% capacity. Production of the new defensive systems is ahead of schedule. The Neptune facilities are converting asteroid materials at maximum rate. What about the colonies? Asked Okafor. All 5 are converting to full military support as planned, said Colony Coordinator Patel. Surface structures are being moved underground or replaced with hardened facilities. The aliens only monitor what happens on the surface and in near orbit. They have no idea what's happening deeper in our systems. And our deep space monitoring? Asked Okafor. Dr. Kim, head of astronomical sciences, looked grim. The swarm has begun to move, Madam President. Just as our models predicted. Still in deep space, but definitely active now. We estimate 8 months until first contact with inhabited systems. President Okafor nodded. And those systems belong to the Fraxian Confederation, said Dr. Kim. On the far side of the galaxy from Earth, they are not prepared. Has the Council detected the swarm yet? Asked Okafor. No evidence of that, said Admiral Chen. Their deep space monitoring is focused on known threats. The swarm is coming from intergalactic space, from a direction they don't watch carefully. So we continue as planned, said Okafor. Complete silence. Complete compliance with the sanctions, and complete preparation for what's coming. Around the table, heads nodded. The human leaders understood their task. Earth would be ready. Back in Council space, confusion about human behavior continued to grow. Some species began to worry that the sanctions had been too harsh. Others insisted that humans needed to learn their place in the galactic order. Ambassador Krill maintained his position. The humans were expanding too quickly, developing weapons too eagerly. We did what was necessary. But to lose their trade and culture entirely? Asked Ambassador Krax. My people miss their chocolate and their music. These are harmless things. If they want to rejoin galactic society, they know what they must do, said Krill. Acknowledge their violations and accept proper oversight. But the humans made no move to appeal the sanctions. Their diplomats remained on Earth. Their ships stayed within their permitted space. Their communications remained minimal and strictly official. As the weeks turned into months, the initial satisfaction of many council members turned to unease. The silence of humanity was becoming uncomfortable. In a private conversation, Elder Voss spoke to Krax. "I have lived for 700 years. I have seen species rise and fall. This situation with the humans, it reminds me of something." "What?" asked Krax. "There is an old human concept called the calm before the storm. When animals sense a coming disaster, they often go quiet and seek shelter. I wonder if we are seeing something similar." "You think the humans know something we don't?" asked Krax. Voss looked troubled. "I think they are preparing for something, and I fear we may have mistaken preparation for submission." But the council majority remained confident. The humans were contained. The sanctions were working. The galactic order was preserved. 6 months after the sanctions began, the first reports came in from the edges of Fraxian space. Strange objects had been detected, moving at high speed toward inhabited worlds. The council paid little attention. Border incidents were common. The Fraxians would handle it, and Earth remained silent. The emergency alarm sounded throughout the Galactic Council chamber. Red lights flashed as delegates hurried to their seats. The massive screens displayed images that few could understand at first. "What are we looking at?" demanded Ambassador Krill. The Fraxian representative, normally calm and composed, was visibly shaking. "The outer colony of Nexar is gone. Completely gone." "What do you mean, gone?" asked High Elder Tazzle. "Planets don't just disappear." "The planet is still there," said the Fraxian, "but everything on it is consumed. No buildings, no vegetation, no people. Nothing but bare rock." Silence fell over the chamber as the images became clear. The once green world of Nexar was now gray and lifeless. Where cities had stood, only empty plains remained. "How is this possible?" whispered Krax. "What could do such a thing?" Elder Voss leaned forward, his ancient eyes narrowed. "Show us the orbital images again." The screen changed to show the approach of strange objects to the Nexar system. They looked like small asteroids at first, but their movement was too controlled, too purposeful. "They're biological," said the Fraxian scientist who had been brought in to explain. "Some kind of hive organism. They land. They consume all organic matter, they replicate, and then they move on to the next target." "How many were there?" asked Voss. "At first, perhaps 100, said the scientist. "Now, after consuming an entire world, millions." The council erupted in panicked discussion. Ambassador Krill called for order. "We must respond immediately," he said. "The council defense fleet must be deployed to contain this threat." "Already done," said the Fraxian representative. "But I must report that our first defensive line has been ineffective." New images appeared on the screen. Council warships firing on the swarm of biological objects. Energy weapons seemed to kill hundreds, but thousands more simply moved around them. When ships were surrounded, the swarm attached itself to their hulls, somehow cutting through even the strongest metals. "The defense fleet has lost 30% of its ships," said the Fraxian, "and the swarm is now heading for the binary system. 3 inhabited worlds, total population 6 billion. "How long until they arrive?" asked Tazul. 5 days at most." The council quickly organized a response plan. More ships were called in from all member species. Scientists were ordered to find the swarm's weaknesses. Evacuation of the binary system began, though everyone knew it could not be completed in time. "What about the humans?" asked Krax quietly. "Should we inform them?" "Why?" asked Krill. "This is happening at the opposite side of the galaxy from Earth. Their ships can't reach it. Their weapons are being reduced. They can offer no help. But they should know," insisted Krax. "This threat could eventually affect everyone." After debate, the council agreed to send a standard alert to all member and sanctioned species, including Earth. The message was brief, describing the threat and the council's response, but asking nothing of the humans on Earth. President Okafor received the message during a meeting with her military commanders. "So it begins," she said, "sooner than we expected, but our preparations are mostly complete." "The swarm has emerged exactly where our deep space probes predicted," said Dr. Kim. "Its behavior matches our historical records." "Historical records?" asked Admiral Chen. "We've never encountered this swarm before." "Not in our lifetime," said Dr. Kim. but we found references in ancient Earth texts. Cave paintings, myths, astronomical records from thousands of years ago. The swarm has visited our galaxy before, approximately every 20,000 years. And no one else knows this? Asked General Rodriguez. The other species don't have our archaeological records, said Dr. Kim. Most of them evolved to intelligence after the last swarm visit. And those few who were around then lost much of their history in the devastation. President Okafor looked at the message from the council again. They give no indication that they know what they're really facing. They're treating it like a border incident. Should we tell them? Asked Patel. No, said Okafor firmly. We stay with the plan. Complete silence. Let them learn the hard way what the swarm can do. Let them see the consequences of dismissing humanity as primitive and dangerous. When they're desperate enough, they'll come to us. And if they don't? Asked Admiral Chen. Then we proceed alone, said Okafor. Earth and our colonies will be protected. The rest of the galaxy will have to fend for itself. 5 days later, the Binary system fell. Despite the Council's best efforts, the defensive fleet was overwhelmed. The swarm had grown too large. Of the 6 billion inhabitants, less than 1 billion were evacuated in time. The rest were consumed along with all other organic matter on the 3 worlds. The Council chamber was now in constant emergency session. Reports came in hourly of the swarm's expansion. It had split into 3 main groups, each heading for different star systems. The Council fleet, despite bringing in ships from across the galaxy, was failing to stop even one group. We need new weapons, said Tazul. Something that can destroy these things more effectively. Our scientists are working on it, said Krill. But they need time. And we don't have time. What about the humans? Asked Krax again. They were developing advanced weapons. That's one reason we sanctioned them. You suggest we ask for help from a species we just punished? Asked Krill, his skin flushing purple with anger. That would undermine the Council's authority. It might save lives, said Krax quietly. The debate continued, but pride won out over practicality. The Council would handle this threat without human help. They increased production of weapons, called in ships from the furthest reaches of Council space, and prepared for a long fight. Meanwhile, the swarm continued to grow and spread. 7 more systems fell within 2 weeks. The Council's response became more desperate. Elder Voss, who had been quiet during much of the debate, finally spoke. We need to understand what we're fighting. Has anyone determined the origin of this swarm? The head scientist looked uncomfortable. We believe it's not natural. The biological units show signs of artificial design. They may be a weapon created long ago by some unknown species. A weapon? Asked Voss. Against whom? Against all life, it seems, said the scientist. They consume everything organic, use the energy and materials to replicate, then move on. They have no individual intelligence that we can detect, but as a group, they show complex strategic behavior. So someone created this plague, said Voss. Why? Perhaps as a final act of revenge, suggested the scientist. A species facing extinction might create such a thing to ensure no one else could live either. Can we communicate with it? Asked Tazul. Negotiate? There's nothing to communicate with, said the scientist. It's a biological machine, programmed for one purpose: consume and replicate. The grim news spread through the Council. 3 weeks after the first attack, 30 systems had been lost. The Council fleet was down to 60% of its original strength. Evacuations were ongoing, but many worlds were too populous to save everyone. We need to send a stronger message to all species, said Krax. This is no longer a border incident. This is an existential threat to all life in the galaxy. The Council agreed. A new message was drafted, more urgent than the first. It described the true nature of the swarm and called on all species to contribute to the defense effort. While it didn't specifically ask the humans for help, it made clear that any assistance would be welcome. The message was sent to all corners of the galaxy, including Earth. President Okafor read the new message to her cabinet. They're beginning to understand, but they're still too proud to ask directly for our help. The swarm is growing faster than even our models predicted, said Dr. Kim. At this rate, it will reach Central Council space within 2 months. Earth might have 4 months at most before we face direct attack. Are we ready? Asked Okafor. Admiral Chen nodded. The fleet is at 90% readiness. The Jupiter and Saturn shipyards have completed production of all planned vessels. The special weapons are tested and deployed. Our colonies are fully converted to military support. And the deep space monitoring? Asked Okafor. We're tracking all three main swarm groups, said Dr. Kim. Their pattern is becoming clear. They're avoiding the most heavily defended systems for now, targeting easier prey first. But eventually they'll hit the Council's core worlds. Then we continue waiting, said Okafor. Let the Council exhaust itself fighting the swarm. Let them realize that their mighty fleet isn't enough. Let them come to us and ask properly for help. And if they don't, asked Patel. Then humanity stands alone, said Okafor. As we have before. The cabinet meeting ended and Earth maintained its silence. No response was sent to the Council's message. No offers of help were made. Human ships stayed within their permitted space, though now they moved with greater purpose, forming defensive patterns around Earth and the colonies. In the Council chamber, as news of more lost worlds came in, Elder Voss spoke again. The humans have not responded to our message. Why would they? Asked Krill bitterly. We pushed them aside. We treated them as children. Perhaps it's time to set aside pride, suggested Voss. Perhaps it's time to ask directly for their help. And admit we were wrong? Asked Tazel. If necessary, yes, said Voss. Before there is nothing left to save. The debate continued for hours, but as reports of new losses came in, even the proudest council members began to consider the unthinkable. Asking 4 months after the first attack, the council chamber was barely recognizable. The elegant decorations had been removed to make space for military equipment. The raised platforms where delegates once sat in comfort were now crowded with tactical displays. Many seats remained empty, their representatives either dead or busy defending their homeworlds. Ambassador Krill, his skin now a pale, stressed gray, was speaking to the reduced assembly. The swarm has taken 64 systems. Our fleet is down to 40% strength. We have evacuated over 30 billion people, but lost at least twice that many. What is our current strategy? Asked a tired-looking Krax. Containment and evacuation, admitted Krill. We can no longer hope to defeat the swarm with our current weapons. We can only slow it down and save as many lives as possible. The mood in the chamber was grim. Many species were facing extinction. Even the oldest and most powerful council members were now fighting for survival. There is one option we haven't fully explored, said Elder Voss slowly. All eyes turned to him. Despite his age, he had remained at the council, refusing evacuation. The humans. We sent them the general alert, said Tazul. They did not respond. We did not ask them directly for help, said Voss. We were too proud. Even if we asked now, what could they do? Asked Krill. Their military was reduced by our sanctions. Their research restricted. A small bitter laugh came from Krax. Do you really believe they obeyed those restrictions? That they dismantled their military and stopped their research? They showed us what we wanted to see. Nothing more. Before anyone could respond, an aide rushed into the chamber. Ambassadors, elders, a human ship has arrived at the station. A human ship? Asked Krill in surprise. They are not permitted to travel here under the sanctions. It's a small vessel, said the aide. Unmarked. It's requesting permission to dock. They say they have a message from Earth. The council members looked at each other. After a brief discussion, they agreed to receive the human message. 20 minutes later, a single human entered the council chamber. She was the same gray-haired woman who had led the silent delegation months ago, Ambassador Chen. She carried no tablet this time, no notes. She walked to the center of the room and looked around at the changed chamber, taking in the military displays and empty seats. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Ambassador Chen broke the silence that humanity had maintained for months. 4 months ago, you restricted our military because you feared it. You restricted our technology because you didn't understand it. You restricted our expansion because you envied it. Her voice was calm but carried throughout the chamber. Yet when true danger arrives, you expect our help. Krill's skin darkened with anger. We did not come to you for help. You have violated the sanctions by coming here. True, said Chen. I have violated your sanctions, because there are more important matters now than your rules and your pride. How dare you, began Tazul, but Elder Voss raised a hand to silence her. Let her speak, said the ancient Dur. We have nothing to lose by listening. Ambassador Chen nodded to Voss. Thank you, Elder, Earth has been monitoring the situation. We know about the swarm. We know how many worlds have been lost. We know your fleets are failing. And you have done nothing to help, accused Krill. You did not ask for our help, said Chen simply. And even if you had, would you have listened to our advice? Would you have followed our lead? Or would you have taken our weapons and dismissed our strategies as primitive and emotional? The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. Chen continued. Earth has known about the swarm for centuries. Not this specific emergence, but the swarm itself. It has visited our galaxy before, approximately every 20,000 years. We found evidence in our ancient records, cave paintings, myths, astronomical observations. Impossible, said Tazul. How could primitive humans have such records? Because the last time the swarm came, humans were already on Earth, said Chen. Not as advanced as now, but present, observing, remembering in their own way. She touched a device on her wrist, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed ancient cave paintings, strange shapes descending from the sky, consuming people and animals. These are from Earth over 15,000 years ago. We have hundreds of similar records from around our world. The display changed to show more images. Ancient tablets with cuneiform writing, Egyptian hieroglyphs, Chinese oracle bones, all showing similar scenes of destruction from the sky. When we first developed space travel and began exploring our solar system, we found more evidence, Chen continued. On Mars, on our moon, on the asteroids. Evidence of previous advanced civilizations in our system, all destroyed by the swarm. This is why Earth united. This is why we built our military. This is why we expanded so quickly. We were preparing for a threat you never told us about, said Krill. Would you have believed us? Asked Chen. Without evidence, without the swarm actually appearing? You would have seen it as an excuse for military buildup, nothing more. The council members exchanged uncomfortable glances. She was right, so what now? Asked Voss. Have you come to gloat? To watch us beg for help? No, said Chen. I've come to offer an alliance. A true alliance, not the condescension you called partnership before. Earth is prepared to join the fight against the swarm. With all our resources, all our weapons, all our knowledge. But as equals, not as children to be controlled. What resources? Asked Krax. What weapons? You complied with our sanctions. Your military was reduced, your research restricted. Ambassador Chen smiled for the first time. Did we? She touched her wrist device again. The holographic display changed to show the Sol system. But it was not the Sol system as the Council knew it. Hidden shipyards orbited Jupiter and Saturn, massive constructions that had never appeared on Council scans. Asteroid bases that should have been mining operations were clearly military installations. And the ships, hundreds of ships, far more than Earth, had ever admitted to possessing. This is impossible, whispered Krill. Our monitors would have detected this. Your monitors see what we allow them to see, said Chen. Just as they did not detect the swarm until it attacked, they did not detect our preparations. So you lied, accused Tazul. You violated the sanctions from the beginning. We prepared for humanity's survival, corrected Chen. Would you have done differently for your own people? Before Tazul could answer, Elder Voss spoke. These ships, these weapons, can they defeat the swarm? Not alone, said Chen honestly. But combined with the remaining council forces following a proper strategy, yes. We believe the swarm can be pushed back and eventually destroyed. What strategy? Asked Krill. We have tried everything. No, said Chen. You've tried everything you know, but you don't know the swarm as we do. She changed the display again. Now it showed detailed scans of the swarm organisms, far more detailed than anything the council had achieved. The swarm is not natural. It was created as a weapon over 1 million years ago by a species facing extinction. They sent it out as revenge against all life, programming it to consume, replicate, and move on. It travels through deep space in a dormant state for thousands of years, then activates when it detects sufficient biomass in a galaxy. How do you know all this? Asked Krax. Because we found one of their ships, said Chen, on the far edge of our solar system. It had crashed there during the last swarm cycle, preserved in the ice of a distant dwarf planet. We recovered its data, learned the swarm's origin, its purpose, and most importantly, its weaknesses. The chamber was silent as the implications sank in. What weaknesses? Asked Voss finally. The swarm organisms communicate through a specific frequency of electromagnetic radiation, said Chen. Disrupt that frequency with enough power, and they become disorganized, easy to destroy. But the disruption must be precisely calibrated and deployed at the right moment. And you have this technology? Asked Krill. We do, said Chen. We've been developing it for decades. Testing it in secret, preparing it for deployment. But to be effective against the entire swarm, we need your help. We need your remaining ships, your production facilities, your people. Why would you help us now? Asked Tazzle. After we sanctioned you, dismissed you, ignored you? Ambassador Chen looked around the chamber, at the tactical displays showing the advance of the swarm, at the empty seats of species now fighting for survival. Because despite what you think of us, humans don't seek revenge. We seek survival not just for ourselves, but for all life. The swarm doesn't distinguish between human, Vexnar, Mern, or Dur. It consumes all. And if we don't stand together now, there will be nothing left of any of us. Elder Voss rose slowly from his seat. Though ancient, he stood tall as he addressed the council. I vote to accept the human offer. To end the sanctions immediately. To form a true alliance against this threat. One by one, the remaining council members voted. Some reluctantly, some eagerly, but all eventually agreed. The choice in the end was simple: pride or survival. Ambassador Krill, as head of the council, made it official. The sanctions against Earth and humanity are hereby lifted. We ask for your help in fighting this threat. Ambassador Chen nodded. Earth accepts. Our fleets will beg. The massive display in the Joint Command Center showed 3 swarm groups moving through council space. Each was marked in red with projected paths and estimated sizes updated in real time. Around them, blue markers showed the positions of the combined human council fleet. Admiral Chen stood before the display, pointing to key positions as he explained the battle plan to the assembled council military leaders. The swarm communicates constantly between its units. This is how it coordinates attacks and shares information about threats. Our disruption devices target these communications. We've tried jamming their signals before, said General Hrax of the Talarian forces. It had minimal effect. You tried general jamming, said Admiral Chen. Our devices are different. They don't just block signals. They introduce specific patterns that confuse the swarm organisms. Think of it as a virus in their communication system. He touched a control, and the display zoomed in on one swarm group. We will deploy the disruption devices here, here, and here, creating a triangle around the swarm. When activated simultaneously, they will create a field that will disorient the organisms. And then, asked Commander Zrill of the Vexnar fleet. Then we attack with everything we have, said Chen. Without coordination, the swarm units are just individual organisms. Dangerous but manageable. Your energy weapons are effective against them one-on-one. It was only their coordinated tactics that overwhelmed your defenses before. The plan was complex but clear. The combined fleet would split into 3 groups, each targeting one swarm cluster. Human ships would deploy the disruption devices and provide heavy firepower, while council ships would form a perimeter and clean up confused swarm units that tried to escape. We begin in 6 hours, said Admiral Chen. Any questions? There were many, but they were technical rather than strategic. The council military leaders, whatever their feelings about humans before, now recognized the value of Earth's preparation and knowledge. As the meeting ended, Commander Zrill approached Admiral Chen privately. Your sister, the ambassador, said humans had been preparing for the swarm for decades. Yet you never warned us. Admiral Chen looked at the Vexnar officer steadily. Would you have believed a warning from primitive, emotional humans? Or would you have seen it as an excuse for military expansion? Zrill's skin shifted color several times before settling on a regretful blue. We would not have listened. I see that now. That's why we prepared alone, said Chen. We hoped the swarm would never come in our lifetime, but we knew better than to rely on hope. 6 hours later, the battle began. The human fleet moved with precision that surprised even their new allies. Ships that had been hidden in gas giants and asteroid belts now revealed their true power. They were smaller than Council capital ships, but faster and more maneuverable. And their weapons, developed in secret despite the sanctions, showed effectiveness that made even veteran Council commanders take notice. The disruption devices were deployed around the first swarm group. When activated, the effect was immediate and dramatic. The swarm, which had been moving in complex formations, suddenly scattered in all directions. Some units stopped completely. Others moved in circles. Their coordinated attack strategy collapsed. The combined fleet closed in. Energy weapons from Council ships cut through the confused swarm units. Human missiles, specifically designed to penetrate and destroy the swarm's biological armor, claimed thousands more. Within hours, what had been a devastating threat was reduced to scattered remnants, easily hunted down and destroyed. First swarm group eliminated, reported Admiral Chen to the Council chamber, where the remaining political leaders watched tensely, moving to engage the second group. Over the next 3 days, the battle continued. The second swarm group was larger and required more disruption devices, but fell to the same strategy. The third group, perhaps learning from the fate of the others, tried to split up before the trap was set. But human scouts had anticipated this and positioned smaller disruption devices along its escape routes. By the end of the week, all 3 main swarm groups had been destroyed. Smaller clusters remained, scattered across dozens of systems, but they were no longer a coordinated threat. They could be handled by local forces, with human advisors providing tactical guidance. In the Council chamber, a formal ceremony was arranged. President Okafor herself came from Earth, the first time a human head of state had visited the Galactic Center since the sanctions. Ambassador Krill, his skin now returned to a healthy blue, addressed the assembly. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I extend our deepest gratitude to humanity for their assistance in defeating the swarm threat. Without their preparation, their technology, and their courage, many more worlds would have been lost. President Okafor stepped forward. Earth accepts your gratitude, Ambassador. But we did not act alone. The bravery of Council forces fighting alongside our ships was crucial to our victory. Nevertheless, said Krill, we must acknowledge our error in imposing sanctions on humanity. We misunderstood your intentions. We saw aggression where there was preparation, threat where there was foresight. And we must acknowledge our failure to communicate clearly, said Okafor diplomatically. We knew of the swarm from ancient records but chose not to share this knowledge, believing it would not be accepted without proof. Elder Voss spoke next. Perhaps the true lesson here is that different perspectives have value. Humanity's approach to the galaxy is different from the Council's traditional methods. You expand quickly, develop technology rapidly, prepare for threats that may never come. We saw this as dangerous. Now we see it saved us all. The formal part of the ceremony concluded with the signing of a new treaty. The sanctions were officially lifted, replaced by a mutual defense agreement. Earth would share its technology and knowledge, while the Council would support human expansion into new systems. Together they would rebuild the devastated worlds and prepare defenses against any future threats. As the ceremony ended, Ambassador Chen approached Elder Voss. You were the voice of reason in the Council from the beginning. You questioned the sanctions. You suggested asking for our help. Voss nodded his ancient head. I have lived long enough to see the pattern of history repeat itself. Young species rise, make mistakes, learn, grow stronger. The Council has existed for thousands of years, but sometimes age brings not wisdom but complacency. And now, asked Chen, will the Council truly accept humans as equals? Or will old fears return once the crisis has passed? That, said Voss, depends on all of us. But I believe this experience has changed the Council fundamentally. We have seen what happens when we dismiss a different approach as primitive or dangerous. We have seen what happens when pride prevents us from seeking help. And we have seen what happens when we refuse to speak, admitted Chen. Perhaps our silence was a mistake as well. We should have tried harder to make you understand. The past is fixed, said Voss. The future is not. And I believe the future of both humanity and the Council will be brighter together than apart. In the months that followed, the alliance between Earth and the Council grew stronger. Human ships helped clear the last swarm remnants from distant systems. Council scientists worked with human researchers to better understand the ancient weapon and how to prevent its return. Together, they established new deep space monitoring stations to provide early warning of any similar threats. On worlds devastated by the swarm, joint reconstruction teams brought life back to barren landscapes. Human agricultural techniques, developed over centuries of adapting to different environments on Earth, proved invaluable in restoring ecosystems. A year after the final battle, a new galactic center was inaugurated. Unlike the old Council chamber with its raised platforms and hierarchical design, the new chamber was circular, with all representatives seated at the same level. Earth held a permanent seat, equal to the founding species of the Council. At the inauguration ceremony, President Okafor and Ambassador Krill stood together before the assembled representatives of all species. "The old council was built on the principle of stability," said Krill. "We valued order, predictability, slow and careful progress. These are not bad things. But we failed to see the value in humanity's different approach. And humanity valued independence, self-reliance, and preparation," said Okafor. "These too are not bad things. But we failed to see the importance of cooperation, of sharing knowledge and concerns openly. Together," they said in unison, "we are stronger than either of us alone." As the ceremony concluded, Ambassador Chen found herself walking beside Commander Zrill, now promoted to head of the Vexnar fleet. "Your people have changed much in a year," said Chen. "I remember when no Vexnar would walk beside a human if they could avoid it." "We have all changed," said Zrill. His skin shifted to a thoughtful green. "I have a question that has bothered me since the battle. When did your people first detect the swarm's awakening?" Chen hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach in the new alliance. 20 years ago. Our deep space probes detected movement at the edge of the galaxy. It was just a shadow then, not clearly identifiable, but our scientists recognized the pattern from ancient records. 20 years, said Zrill in wonder. You prepared for 20 years for a threat that might never have come in your lifetime.